Okay. Okay, hi everybody. Welcome back to another English class here on verbling.com. My name is Lisa and I am from the United States. I live in the state of Washington. That's on the west coast of the United States. Some people confuse that with Washington, D.C., which is the capital, but that's on the east coast of the United States. If you have a reservation for this hour, you can use that now. Just click on the button up there. If you don't have a reservation for this class and you would like to join us to do some reading here, we're going to be doing a reading of an article from npr.org, and I put the link to it already in the Verbling chat there. That's a link to the Google document. I can also put the link to the actual web page where I got the article. It's right there. If you don't have a reservation, that's okay. In about less than 2 minutes, you will see a join class button, and then you can click it up above there to join. It will open up a new window for you, and you can join us here in the Google Hangouts. You do need to be a member of Verbling to join the classes so that you can read and speak and practice here with us. If you don't have a membership, you can try a 7-day free trial membership to see whether or not you like the service and you want to join. Okay, hi, welcome. Okay, what's your name?
My name is Madina.
Magina?
Yes.
Hi. Magina, where are you from?
I'm from Kazakhstan.
Kazakhstan.
We have a lesson today. In my country it was morning.
Cool.
About Google employers.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Interesting. What did you learn about Google employers? Or employees, maybe.
Yes. Yeah? I learned that Google company has very good perks.
Perks, yes.
Yes.
Good perks, yes, they do. Yeah.
And
nice.
Very interesting information about Google company.
Google is a very large company, and they do a lot of interesting things, and lots of people work for them. So it's a huge company nowadays, and lots of perks. Yeah, lots of fun stuff, I hear.
Okay.
Yeah, nice. Okay, Magina, welcome then, and Mariam.
Yes, teacher.
Hi, Mariam. How are you?
Fine. I'm doing well.
Good. Glad to see you.
Long time no see.
Yeah, it's been a while. Welcome. And Koba, how are you?
Good. How are you, teacher?
I'm fine, thank you. Koba, where do you live?
I live in Tbilisi, in Georgia.
In Georgia. Okay, wonderful. Is it snowing in Georgia?
No, it's not snowing yet.
Not yet. Okay. Okay, let's see. And Juan, how are you doing?
Fine, thanks for asking. How are you doing?
I'm good. Juan, is that you with the guitar?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. It's mine.
You're in a band?
Yeah. Thanks.
Where do you live?
From Argentina.
Oh, okay. Nice. Argentina. Welcome. And hi, Amparo. How are you today?
Hi, teacher. Doing well, thank you. What about you?
Good. You doing okay?
Yeah.
Okay. And Yuki's joining us.
Hi again.
Hi, Yuki. I'm just going to mute some people here because I hear some background
Yes, I hear the noise.
Yeah. So I muted some of you guys. If there's background noise, your microphone does a good job of picking it up. So it's good to have your microphone muted, and then when you want to speak, you can unmute your microphone just in case there's some noise from your microphone, your headphones, or something happening in your house or something like that. So, okay. Well, welcome everybody. In this hour, we're doing a reading class. So I had another class earlier where we were just talking, but now we're going to be doing some reading and some talking. It's not too long of an article. I think. But the article is from NPR.org, which is a national radio station here that's played in lots of different cities and towns throughout the United States. It's called public radio because it's not commercial radio, so you don't have commercials, and so it has some really interesting shows. And they also have this website which has a lot of articles about different things. This particular article doesn't have the audio with it, but sometimes if you like to look around this website, you'll see lots of different topics. You can look here, different types of topics, and you'll hear the radio program. Sometimes maybe it's like 4 minutes long, 3 minutes, 7 minutes, something like that. And it's a really good practice for your listening. So if you want to listen to something interesting, you could just go looking around the website and find something. It's really good for listening practice. The speakers are usually pretty clear and not too fast, so it's good. All right, so this title is Getting Some Me Time, Why Millennials Are So Individualistic. I don't know if any of you were in my class one time. We were looking at new words that have been added to the English dictionary. And in fact, me time is now an official phrase or a word, a term, and it's been used so much. And I'm just wondering, before we start reading the article, let's talk a little bit about what that means. So, Amparo, what do you understand by me time?
I suppose that refers to the time for yourself, to do your activities, to be alone.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, in the past, more people would say something like, I need some time alone, or I just want to be by myself, or something like that. But for some reason, we got started saying, I need some me time, instead of saying it another way. So it's now an actual word, some me time. And people definitely talk about it, talk about getting it, needing it, that type of thing. Amparo, do you need a lot of me time?
Well, usually at home, I have a lot of me time because we are just 4 of us here now, so I have me time.
Do your own thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Juan Manuel, do you get a lot of me time, or do you need more me time?
No, I think it's good. Actually, now is my me time. So
good.
I can join in Berlin, so it's fine for me.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, exactly. Sometimes on your me time, you do something that you enjoy or that you want to do specifically to for you, not for anybody else. Kobo, what about you? Do you get enough me time?
I think I need some me time.
Yeah.
In general, I have plenty of time to relax and enjoy, but when winter comes, then I have a lot to do. I need right now and me time.
Yeah. Okay. And Miriam, how about you?
Well, I think I'm fine. So I'm just enjoying my me time today.
All right, cool. And Yuki, do you get enough me time?
Yes, I'm so selfish that I need a lot of me time, but it causes to my wife's angry mood. So I have to also pay attention to spending our time for service to my wife.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a tricky balance in a relationship, especially like a partner relationship. If one person needs more alone time or me time and the other person likes to be, together, it can be tricky to work that out and make sure everybody stays happy.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
To maintain a good relationship with your
Your partner.
With your yes favorite person. Of course we have to find a good balance of me time and time for others.
And time for others, right? Magina, how about you?
I don't get enough of me time because I am a student. I have to do so many homework, and I live at the student dormitory. I live with another girls.
Yeah.
And
my headphones messed up. Okay, sorry about that. Can you say again what you just said last? You live with other girls in the dorm?
Yes, and I haven't get enough me time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's another good point that you mentioned. A lot of times when we think of me time, it doesn't include like working or doing homework or studying. It's something where you do just because you want to, like something that is nourishing, we say, for you. Yeah.
I try to spend my me time learning playing the guitar.
Nice.
Learning another languages.
Cool.
Spending me time with my friends.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. And let's see, Irma, you just joined us. Hi there, Irma.
Hi.
Hi. Where are you calling from?
I'm from Panama.
Panama. Okay, wonderful. Welcome. So we're just getting started a little bit before we read this article talking about me time, time for yourself. And my question for everybody is, do you get enough me time? What do you think?
Well, I think that I don't have enough me time because I have a lot of things to do first. Like things in the university and also I work for a foundation. I am volunteer. So I don't have enough time for me.
Yeah, you're kind of busy. Yeah. Okay, good. Well, let's go ahead to our article and we'll read. And the way I'm going to do it today, even though we have quite a few people, I'm going to read out loud. The reason why I read out loud is so it can also serve as a listening practice for you guys to check your own listening comprehension. Can you understand when I'm reading out loud? Either by following along or just listening. You could even just close your eyes and listen. Another reason is for you to hear new words that maybe you haven't come across before, and when I say them out loud and you're reading along, you'll be able to hear how I pronounce them. And then you guys are going to take turns reading, and I'll point out vocabulary as well. And if you have any questions during this time, you can always just unmute your microphone and ask your question, or you can type it in the VerbLink chat. Either way is fine. Okay, so the title is Getting Some Me Time, Why Millennials Are So Individualistic. Millennials describes a generation of people. So the generation of people who were kind of becoming adults around the year 2000. So that's called the millennium, changing over into the 2000s from the 1900s. And so those people now are like in their 20s and early 30s, but mostly in their mid-20s is what it's about.
Are there people who are born in 2000?
No, not born in 2000 because they would only be 14 years old. They're more like the people who became adults around that time. So we're turning like 18 around the year 2000. So now, 14 years later, they're describing people that are like in their mid-20s to 30s, like that. It's kind of a loose category, but it's more people who are just kind of like young adults. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it'll explain a little bit more. I don't think there's like a given. It might be like people who were turning 18 right around like 1998 to 2000, just like the switch over from the 1900s into the 2000s. Okay. They are a class of self-centered, self-absorbed, selfie-snapping 20-somethings. This is how many critics have come to define the millennial generation. But hold on. Isn't this what was said about every generation when it was young? Minus the selfies, of course. Some scholars argue that millennials aren't entitled. They just have more time to be themselves. Okay, let's start with you, Amparo.
They are a class of self-centered, self-absorbed, selfie-snapping 20-somethings. This is how many critics have come to define the millennial generation. But hold on, isn't this what was said about every generation when it was young? Minus the selfies, of course. Some scholars argue that millennials aren't entitled. They just have more time to be themselves.
Okay, so self-centered and self-absorbed are pretty much kind of the same thing. It means you just think about yourself all the time. The world revolves around you. You're the most important person, and if you're self-absorbed, you just think about yourself a lot, as compared to thinking about other people. And of course, you guys know for sure the English word selfie. When that's the picture we have here of this lady taking a selfie of herself. Nowadays, with cameras on your smartphones, it's very easy to just snap a picture or take a picture of yourself because the camera turns around. All right, so this is how a lot of people, mainly
I'm sorry.
Yes.
What 20-something means?
In your 20s, 21, 22,
23. Okay.
Yeah. And so a lot of people who are kind of critical of this group of people of this age, this is how they define them. This is how they think about them. But this person is saying, hold on. That just means wait. Wait a minute here. Wait a second. Isn't this what has been said or what was said about every generation when it was young? So young people, except for the selfies. Okay, so minus the selfies. So yes, the selfies is new, but of course, people have been saying this about young people for a long time. They're self-centered, they're self-absorbed, they don't think about other people, that kind of thing. Some scholars, so scholars are people who are like academics, people who study anything, but in this case, probably human behavior and society and that type of stuff. They argue, they say that millennials aren't entitled. Entitled means when you think you deserve something just because you're there, like you're entitled to a good job or to money or to a free education. It means you deserve it. You think you should have it. All right, markers of adulthood. The rise of individualism has been going on for centuries, says Jean Twenge, a psychology professor at San Diego State University and author of Generation Me, Why Today's Young Americans Are More Confident, Assertive, Entitled, and More Miserable Than Ever Before. How we define adulthood has also changed, says Jeffrey Jensen Arnett, a research professor at Clark University in Worcester. This is short for Massachusetts. You can also just say Worcester, Mass. And the director of the Clark Poll of Emerging Adults. People used to feel like adults once they got married or had children, but that's not so much the case anymore. Okay, Irma, read those two paragraphs.
Okay, markers of adulthood. Of individualism has been going on for centuries, says Jean Twenge, a psychology professor at San Diego State University and author of Generation Me, Why Today's Young Americans are more confident, assertive, entitled, and more miserable than ever before. Fine adulthood has also changed, says Jeffrey Jensen Arnett, a research professor of Clark University in Worcester, Massachusetts, and the director of the Clark Poll of Emerging Adults. People used to feel like adults once they got married or had children, but that's not so much the case anymore.
Good. Okay, so the rise of anything means when it has become either like more popular, more famous. You can say an increase in. So it just means that people, according to this author here, this lady, people have becoming more individualistic. So the rise of individualism as a noun has been going on. So it's been happening for centuries. So it's not a new thing. Centuries is, of course, hundreds of years. So as humans have been living, they've been, according to her, they have been becoming more individualistic, is what that sentence means there. And she wrote about this in her book, Why Today's Young Americans Are More Confident. So that sounds good. Good, confident, assertive means when you're assertive, it means you go after what you want. You're not afraid. You're not shy. You just you're not aggressive necessarily, but you do go after what you want. But entitled, that's not usually a good evaluation of somebody. That means you think you deserve something, and also they're more miserable than ever before. So miserable means not feeling good. You're not having a good time. You're miserable. How we define adulthood has also changed. So what is the definition? What does it mean to be an adult? So this person here, Jeffrey, he is just telling us that people used to feel, so here's this construct here, used to do something or feel like adults. So when you got married or maybe you started to have children, then you're like, okay, now I'm an adult. But now that's not so much the case anymore. So to be the case, that's kind of the expression. It means that's not what it's like nowadays. So that's not the case. That's not what it's like nowadays. In 2014, Clark established Adult Poll, that's the name of the poll, found that the top 3 markers for adulthood were accepting responsibility for self, financial independence, and making independent decisions. Twenge first encountered this rise in individualism when she was doing a project on gender roles in the 1990s. Both women and men scored high on this masculine scale that includes highly individualistic traits, such as being independent, relying on yourself, being a leader, etc. Twenge began studying other traits such as self-esteem and extroversion and recognized a pattern that these traits were all increasing over time. Okay. Let's see. Juan Manuel. Hi. Nicolojo and Rafael. Hi, guys.
Okay.
Juan Manuel. Yeah, these 2 paragraphs here, starting from the 2014. Yeah.
Okay. The 2014 Clark established Adult Poll found that the top 3 markers for adulthood were accepting responsibility for self, financial independence, and making independent decisions. Twenge first encountered this rise in individualism when she was doing a project on gender roles in the 1990s. Both women and men scored high on this masculine scale that includes highly individualistic traits, such as being independent, relying on yourself, being a leader, etc. Twenge began studying other traits such as self-esteem and extroversion, and recognized a pattern that these traits were all increasing over time.
Okay. So, found that. So whenever you do a poll or a survey or something, the findings, that's what you say you found out. So you discovered, looking at the results, you get to say something about it. We found that, or our findings were that. All right, so the top 3 markers for adulthood. So a marker means something that you can say, this is what an adult is. It is what marks you as an adult. If you have these things, we say, okay, now you're acting like an adult versus like a young person, a teenager, an adolescent, something like that. So you have to accept responsibility for yourself, taking care of yourself. Financial independence, so your parents or somebody else is not paying for you, they're not paying for you to live, and you are making independent decisions. So instead of having your parents, grandparents, family, teachers making your decisions for you, you're doing them by yourself. So those three things were very important for figuring out whether or not you're an adult. All right, so they first encountered. To encounter means to come across or to find or to discover or to see something. So they encountered this rise in individualism when they were doing a project on gender roles. Genders, if you're a man or a woman, and how those your gender influences like your decisions and things like that. All right, so both the women and the men were scoring high on the masculine scale. A scale is like how you rate something, from 0 to 10, that's a scale. And if you score high on that scale, it's like a high level. So they were high in individualistic traits. A trait is something that you have as a person, like a personality trait. So a trait is something like you are very independent, you are a good leader, these types of things about yourself. So they rely on, you don't rely on other people, which means you do things independently. To rely on somebody means you're dependent on them. You have to, they have to help you out or something like that. She started to study other traits like self-esteem and extroversion versus introversion. So how, how were people in terms of, did they go out and be in the world and be with groups and that kind of thing, or did some people, were they more introverted, that kind of thing? She recognized a pattern. So to recognize just means to see. She was seeing a pattern that these traits were all increasing. So according to her poll and to that study, people were getting more and more individualistic over time. You have emerging adulthood, taking more time to find yourself in your 20s, Tweng says. By definition, that is an individualistic pursuit. I want to have that time to myself before I settle down. That is one that is unknown in traditional collectivist societies. But Arnett wouldn't fully agree with Tweng's definition of emerging adulthood, a term he coined in his book, his 2004 book, Emerging Adulthood, the winding road from late teens through the 20s. Okay, Koba.
Start
from you have emerging.
Emerging adulthood, taking more time to find yourself in your 20s. Twenge says, by definition, that is an individualistic pursuit. I want to have that time to myself before I settle down. That is one that is unknown in traditional collectivist societies. But Arnett would not fully agree with Twenge's definition of emerging adulthood, a term he coined in his 2004 book, Emerging Adulthood, the winding road from late teens through the 20s.
Good. So this is a term, emerging adulthood. So when something is emerging, it's just kind of happening. It's starting out and developing over time, but it's not yet fully formed. So you're becoming an adult, but you're not there yet. And what she's arguing is that it's taking more time now for people to become actual adults, acting like actual adults, because they're taking more time for themselves, to find themselves, to spend time who they are, that kind of thing. And she says, by definition, so just by saying that you're going to spend more time with yourself, that's a more individualistic thing to do. A pursuit is like what you go after, something you do, an activity, for example. And so He's saying, I want to have, this is like a quote that young people say, I want to have that time to myself before I settle down. You guys know what settle down means? Anybody?
Yeah.
Established.
To live somewhere, yeah, to settle down.
To settle down actually means to get married.
Get married?
Yeah. So a lot of people, young people in the United States, for example, are not quick to get married and settle down. That's what we say. Get married and settle down. Like, you know, buy a house, have a job, start having kids, that kind of stuff. So a lot of young people in their 20s are much more interested in pursuing a career, you know, finding out what they love to do, traveling, this type of stuff. They don't want to settle down, which is like, you know, staying in one place, getting married, you know, having kids, this type of thing. All right, so that is what used to happen more traditionally.
I'm sorry, Koba. Could you mute your microphone? Maybe I hear noise from you.
Okay, yeah,
I'm sorry.
All right, good.
Okay, now I don't hear noise.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Okay. So this, the idea is this didn't used to happen so much in traditional collectivist societies. A collectivist society is where, you know, the group is more important than the individual. So, you know, people used to get married earlier, settle down, stay with the family, that type of thing. But Arnett, the other guy, wouldn't fully agree with Twang's definition of emerging adulthood. Okay, a term he coined. So researchers, writers, things like that, sometimes when they create kind of a new term or a phrase, that means they coined it, they created it. So he created this term in his book. So the title was Emerging Adulthood, and you know, he was talking about the winding road. So a winding road means, like, instead of a straight path or a straight road, it winds, so it's going here and there. And he's talking about the time period from the late teens through the 20s. So that's a time when, probably in the book, he's talking about how people are becoming adults, emerging as adults. All right, but what he says is it's partly that, but it's more than that. Arnett says there's a space that's opened up in the 20s that is the most individualistic time of life. When you think about it, when are you freer from social rules than in your 20s? I describe it as the self-focused time in life, he says. I don't mean that they're selfish. I mean that they have fewer social rules and obligations, the freedom to be self-directed. All right, so he kind of defined that a little more there. Miriam?
Okay. It's partly that, but it's more than that. Arnett says there's a space that's opened up in the 20s that is the most individualistic time of life. When you think about it, when are you freer from social rules than in your 20s? I describe it as the self-focused time of life, he says. I don't mean that they are selfish. I mean that they have fewer social rules and obligations, the freedom to be self-directed.
Good. So he's kind of making a point that it's actually just kind of like nowadays a time period. So you have space. So you have this ability to kind of do what you want to do. So this, he's saying it has opened up, meaning like in the way that we live now in our societies. And when you're 20, that's usually a time where maybe you're finishing up college, maybe you're getting your first job, this kind of stuff. And if you don't get married and settle down, you actually have a space there, he's saying, that which is described as a very individualistic time. You can take your time because you're free from social roles. You're not married yet, maybe you're not a mom, you're not a dad. Maybe you have a job, but you're not like a boss or a manager yet, something like that. And you have freedom to do things for yourself. So it's a self-focused. So it's not a negative term. He doesn't mean that they're selfish, but they have time to focus on their individual lives. All right. They have fewer social rules and obligations. for example, when you get married or when you have kids especially, you're more obligated to do things. You have to do things for other people. And so you have more freedom now to do some self-directed activities. That's what he means. They can decide, make their own decisions what they want to do. Okay, stable jobs aren't easy to come by. Emerging adults are ages 18 to the mid to late 20s. So right now, the second wave, so what I was talking about was the earlier wave, it's a little bit older. The second wave of the millennial generation falls into this group. But of course, this phase of life wasn't always there. 50 years ago, the median age of marriage for women was 20. Today, it's 27, according to the Pew Research Center. I think it's hard for young women today to understand the kind of pressure their grandmothers were under to find a husband, Arnett says. Okay, yeah, it's changed a lot. Okay, psicólogo. What's your name?
My name is Paulo. Nice to meet you.
Okay,
Yeah.
nice to meet you. All right, your turn to read. You can read all this right there.
Okay. Stable jobs aren't easy to come by. Emerging adults are aged 18 to the mid to late 20s. So right now, the second wave of the millennial generation falls into this group. But of course, this phase of life wasn't always there. 50 years ago, the median age of marriage for women was 20. Today is 27, according to the Pew Research Center. I think it's hard for young women today to understand the kind of pressure their grandmothers were under to find a husband, Arnett says.
Good. All right, so stable, just want to make sure you guys understand that word. When you think of a job, you have stable and unstable jobs. So a stable job is something like, for example, a teacher. Usually once you become a teacher at a school, you're working for the city or something, you're probably not going to get fired very easily or something. So it's pretty stable. An unstable job is like a more like minimum wage job working at McDonald's where people come and go a lot, that kind of thing. So it's hard these days to find or to come by a stable job. So that's just the subtitle of this next part of the article. All right, so the second wave, so there have been a couple of waves. The first people who were turning adults when the year 2000 came around, and now this a little bit younger group, that's the one that they're talking about now. So they fall into this group, the people ages 18 to the mid to late 20s. But the main idea for this part is that this phase of life, so this time period of life wasn't always here, because before, people got married earlier. So the median or average age of marriage used to be only 20 years old for women. Today it's 27. So people are waiting to get married, waiting to settle down. So even today it's hard for young women to understand, you know, the type of pressure or the kind of pressure that their grandmothers were under. So to be under pressure means, you know, people are kind of saying, hey, when you're getting married, did you find a husband yet? Oh, he's cute. Do you like him? That kind of thing is pressure to people to try to find somebody to marry. And that happened a lot more 50 years ago in the United States. Okay, the stigma around being single has evaporated, leaving more time for young people to explore and find themselves. Since 1970, there has been a dramatic shift in the average age Americans get married, Arnett says. Pew's recent report said 25% of millennials will never marry. There are economic pressures, Twang says. It's the idea of marrying only when you have stable jobs, and stable jobs aren't easy to come by. Okay, Rafael.
The stigma around being single has evaporated, leaving more time for young people to explore and find themselves. Since 1970, there has been a dramatic shift in the average age Americans get married, Arnett says. Pew's recent report said 25% of millennials will never marry. There are economic pressures, Twenge says. It's the idea of marrying only when you have stable jobs, and stable jobs aren't easy to come by.
Good. A stigma around something. So it means like if there's a stigma around being single in the past, there used to be, it means like there was something negative about it. Like you didn't want to be single because then people might be asking you, why haven't you found somebody yet? What's the problem? You know, didn't you like him, or doesn't she like you? That kind of thing. So there's a stigma around it. So in different cultures, there are different things that have stigma around them. So in some cultures, it might be like the way you look, your sexuality, your religion, you know, all what language you speak. It really kind of depends on where you're living. But in this case, in the United States, this stigma about being single has evaporated. So it's gone, basically. To evaporate, it's gone away, which basically allows young people to do different things. Rather than just looking for a husband or a wife, you get to explore and find yourself. So you get to, you know, figure out what you are really about, what you like. That's kind of what younger people are doing nowadays. There has been a dramatic shift. So a shift is a change, and dramatic means like significant, big, important. And we see that, you know, people are getting married much later, and some people are deciding they're not going to get married at all. It's not something they really want to do. Of course, there are nowadays in our economic crisis, I could say, there are economic pressures. So some people, they don't actually want to get married until they have a stable job, or maybe like a woman or a man won't marry somebody else if they don't have a stable job. And those aren't easy to come by. So it's not as easy as it used to be to get a good, stable job where you know you're going to have full-time work and you're going to have enough money to live. The movements that took off in the 1960s and 70s, the sexual revolution and birth control, civil rights, the rise in college attendance, caused this new life period to open up. Young people still believe in the institution of marriage, Arnott says. They just want to wait longer. Nearly 69% of singles in this cohort would like to marry eventually, according to the 2014 Clark poll. Okay, Yuki.
Okay. The movement that took off in the 1960s and 70s, the sexual revolution and birth control, civil rights, the rise in college attendance, caused this new life period to open up. Young people still believe in the institution of marriage, Arnott says. They just want to wait longer. Nearly 69% of singles in this cohort would like to marry eventually, according to the 2014 Clark poll.
All right, so the movements, these are specifically to the United States, but maybe happened in some other countries as well. So we had, like, you know, the hippies and stuff in the 60s, the 70s, free love, that kind of stuff. So there was a sexual revolution where people were much more open about sex, talking about it, you know, exploring different ideas, different relationships with people, sexuality, that kind of stuff was out there more in the public eye. People were using birth control. There were civil rights, so the African American people were getting their rights, you know, gays and lesbians, that kind of stuff. And a lot more people were going to college than ever before. So this was kind of like a new life period opened up. So opened up means it became available. So this was something that wasn't happening before those years, like in the 1950s and stuff. So young people still believe in, so if you're paying attention to the prepositions, we believe in things, or you, if you believe in it, it means it's something that you value. So they still believe in the institution of marriage, so the idea of getting married. They just want to do it a little bit later. They want to wait. In fact, nearly 69% of the singles in this cohort, this group, so the group that they surveyed is what they're talking about. They eventually, so in the future, they would like to get married, but they're not in a hurry. Less politics, more social change. While increased individualism opened up new opportunities to people, some researchers suggest that democracy won't fare well in the long run. Specifically, civic engagement and social capital declined equally between the baby boomers and Generation X and the millennials, Tweng says. In Europe, their system also has very individualistic views, which is usually accompanied by more civic involvement, she says. We have this kind of empty individualism where we have the self-focus but not the engagement that we really need for an individualistic democracy. So now she's getting into the politics. Magina.
Okay, less politics, more social change. While increased individualism opened up new opportunities to people, some researchers suggest that democracy won't fare well in the long run. Specifically, civic engagement and social capital declined equally between the baby boomers and the Generation X and Generation X and the millennials, Tweng says. In Europe, their system also has very individualistic views, which is usually accompanied by more civic involvement. She says, we have this kind of empty individualism where we have the self-focus but not the engagement that we really need for an individualistic democracy.
So, a couple things here. She's now concerned that the people are so individualistic and they're not engaged in the public debate, like civic life. So she's saying that our democracy here in the United States won't fare well, so it won't do well. It's not going to continue working, that's what it means, in the long run. So, you know, in the future, if we continue on like this is the idea. And specifically, she's talking about civic engagement. So that relates to things like being involved in politics, in government, voting in elections, knowing the issues, that type of thing, and doing something about it. Also, social capital. Capital kind of usually refers to investments and money and that type of thing. But in terms of social, it's the same idea of, you know, working for the group, for society. So this has declined between the baby boomers, who are the generation of people like my parents in their 60s, Generation X, that's more like me probably, and then the millennials. So different generations have different names here in the United States. In Europe, they're also very individualistic, but they are more civically involved or engaged. So people are voting, people care about the government, they have opinions, things like that. They are not apathetic, which a lot of people are in that age range here in the United States. They are not very political at all. So she's saying that could be a problem. All right, so others say that young people recognize that the old institutions aren't working. It's not that they don't want to participate, but they lack trust that individual participation will make a difference. The reality is, when you look at young people, all the data shows that young people are civic-minded in a very different way, says Erica Williams-Simon, a social impact and communication strategist. They are not as interested in politics, but are interested in social change and finding creative, innovative ways to make a difference that are, in a way, more effective than the systems of the past. Okay. Amber?
Others said that young people recognize that the old institutions aren't working. It's not that they don't want to participate, but they lack trust that individual participation will make a difference. The reality is, when you look at young people, all the data shows that young people are civic-minded in a very different way, says Erica Williams-Simon, a social impact and communication strategist. They are not as interested in politics, but are interested in social change and finding creative, innovative ways to make a difference that are in a way more effective than the system of the past.
Okay, so basically, the older institutions, you know, the ones that their grandparents and great-grandparents created and were involved in, they're not working. So they don't really trust. They lack trust. So if you lack something, it means you don't have it. So they do not have trust in the fact that, if you do something like vote, they don't think it's going to make a difference. It's not going to change anything. So they're not interested in doing that. But this person is arguing that, in fact, they are very civic-minded. So they do think about participation in the society, but in a different way. She's saying that they are not so interested in politics, politicians, voting, that type of thing, but they are interested in social change, so making a difference socially in the world that they're living in, and that they're finding creative and innovative meaning new ways to make a difference that are maybe, actually, say in a way, that means kind of like maybe, more effective than the past. Neil Howe, who coined the term millennial in his 1990 book Generations, says unwanted backlash arises when older generations jump to stereotype millennials. Howe says when baby boomers view younger workers in a negative light, it can lead to poorer productivity throughout the organization, and younger workers can have lower levels of engagement. Okay, let me go there. Okay, Juan Manuel. Starting with Neil Howe, right there. Juan, your microphone is muted.
Yeah, sorry.
There you go.
Neil who? Who coined?
It's kind of low. I can't hear you too well.
Let me. Now?
Is it low for you guys too?
Now?
So quiet.
Very quiet. Pretty quiet.
Yes, voice is low.
Yeah. Talk louder, or maybe if you have a mic, put it closer to your mouth or something.
Yeah. Give me 1 second.
Go ahead. We'll listen carefully. Now I can't hear you at all.
Okay.
Now I can hear you.
Neil Howe, who coined the term millennial in his 1990 book Generations, says unwanted backlash arise when older generations jump to stereotype millennials. Howe says when baby boomers view younger workers in a negative light, it can lead to poorer productivity.
And keep going right there.
Throughout the organization, and younger workers can have lower levels of engagement.
Good. All right, so he's the one who coined the term millennial, so he came up with or created that term, and he's saying, unwanted backlash arises. Backlash is when you're kind of criticizing something. So if these older generations, if they're really quick to jump to, so instead of really looking at these young people and seeing what they're doing, they just say, oh, they're just a bunch of selfish kids, something like that, then he's saying that's not a good idea. You shouldn't jump to stereotype them, because it will be bad for productivity. It's a negative thing, and it can lead to poor productivity throughout the organization or the business, and younger workers will have lower levels of engagement. So if they don't think that the older people, care about them, or they just are negative towards them, they're probably not going to be as engaged. Arnett says, while millennials are often criticized for being so individualistic, he thinks they will be better off in the long run. I've argued rather strenuously that it's inaccurate to call them narcissists, because they have this temporary period that is so self-focused, he says. People do get used to making their own decisions. It's a challenge, then, to partner with somebody else and have to compromise about things. I think people will make much better choices if they have their 20s to figure it out. Okay, Mariam.
Okay. Arnott says, while millennials are often criticized for being so individualistic, he thinks they will be better off in the long run. I've argued rather strenuously that it's inaccurate to call them narcissists because they have this temporary period that is self-focused, he says. People do get used to making their own decisions. It's a challenge then to partner with somebody else and have to compromise about things. I think people will make much better choices if they have their 20s to figure it out.
Okay. So these people, these young people, are often criticized. So people are usually, saying negative things about them being so individualistic. But he thinks they will be better off. So to be better off means you're going to have a better outcome. So in the long run, in the future, over the next, 30, 40 years, 50 years of their life, it's going to be okay for them. In fact, they're going to be doing better. That's what he thinks. He says, I've argued rather strenuously. Strenuously means like I really put a lot of effort into this. I'm really passionate about this thing, so I'm arguing that it's inaccurate. So it's not accurate to call them narcissists. A narcissist is somebody who really, it's kind of like a diagnosable thing where you really only think about yourself all the time. But that's not what they're doing. He says this is a temporary period. It's not going to last their entire lives. It's just this special time where they are being self-focused. So he thinks that if they have time to figure this out during their 20s, figure out what it means to be on your own and what you want out of life, you make your own decisions and you live an individualistic type of lifestyle. He thinks that, there are going to be some challenges when you have to partner with somebody. If you get married, for example, you're going to have to learn how to compromise, take other people into consideration. But overall, he has a positive outlook. People are going to make better choices in the long run. That's what he's saying there. So we have like 4 minutes left. I'm wondering, I'm put a top secret. So I put in the chat if you guys want to tell us where are you in the 20s and the 30s, 40s. So this is not my generation, the millennial generation, but there are quite a few people on Verbling who would fall into that category. So tell me, Paulo, where are you from?
I'm from Brazil.
Oh, from Brazil. Okay, and Rafael's from Brazil as well. Do you think the same thing is happening to the young people in Brazil? Are they seeming self-focused and maybe getting married a little later, taking time to spend, do things on their own?
I agree with this point of view because I see not just only the 20 generations or millennial generation, but our society, I think it's more individualistic than the other time. I think that our society suffer a lot of other social issues, so the people tends to be more individualistic and protect ourselves and trying to make things for unfortunately, it's happening in our society, but I agree with the test that in 20s is more easier to be individualistic than the other times.
Yeah, sure. In the older times, people were definitely more worried about your age and if you got married and what are you going to do with your life, and now we have some more freedom to just figure it out and not have to jump into anything too quickly. Rafael, do you see this happening in Brazil? Friends of yours and stuff, are they jumping into getting married early, or are they waiting, spending time?
Yes, I also agree because I think there's a common sense of competitions, and I think people are more aware nowadays that they have to be more qualified to find a better job and better opportunities. So some people used to say that we live in a jungle of stones. So because if there's always a competition, we don't know what to find in the next corner. So
yeah.
So I believe that people are more they are more aware that they have to be more qualified, and especially women when they have to stop studying and stop getting knowledge to have babies and build this stop what they are doing. I don't think this fit in their plans. So I think they are changing their mindset in general.
Yeah, yeah. Magina, I want to go to you since you sound pretty young. So, what do you think about this idea of focusing more on yourself and figuring things out before you settle down, get married, that type of thing?
I think that it is up to the situation, maybe. As for me, when I find a person that I fall in love, I will be married for him. But right now, I think that I should do something for myself. Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay, guys. Well, we used up our hour, so I'll let you go. But thanks for coming to class and reading this article. It's interesting. It's timely. It's definitely something that people talk a lot about here in the United States. So you'll find lots of articles about this type of thing. So you never know what the future is going to bring. So there we go. Thanks, guys, for coming and have a good day. Take care.
Teacher, take care.
Thank you.
Bye bye. Bye.